So when I read the script, I called my agent and said, whatever.
Wow.
It didn't really matter to me. And then he said, no, they want you to play Red.
Attachment to Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. And this was something that stuck with you for years before it materialized.
Yeah.
Were you just enamored with the original book, the novella?
I was absolutely just gobsmacked by it.
We were not nominated for 7, I'm sorry.
We were none.
We were not a stinking one.
No.
I hate to tell you,
knowledge about it. Yeah.
it's a love story between two men. It is probably one of the few that gets away with it.
They called it a box office flop that somehow became the greatest film never to win Best Picture. But what if the real story behind The Shawshank Redemption is even more incredible than the movie itself? Prepare to have your mind blown. The $1 deal that changed cinema forever. Stephen King literally sold the rights for $1 and never cashed the check. Here's something that'll make your jaw drop. When Frank Darabont wanted to adapt Stephen King's novella, the horror master didn't demand millions. He sold the rights for exactly $1 through his Dollar Baby program. But here's the kicker that nobody talks about. King never even cashed that measly check. Years later, he framed it and sent it back to Darabont with a note reading, "In case you ever need bail money, love, Steve." This wasn't just generosity, it was pure genius. That single dollar gave Darabont complete creative freedom because studio executives weren't breathing down his neck over a massive investment. Tim Robbins later revealed this created an almost magical atmosphere on set where they could focus on storytelling instead of commercial pressure. The film that would eventually top IMDb's greatest movies list for decades started as Hollywood's afterthought. Sometimes the most powerful stories emerge when nobody's watching. The irony is perfect. A movie about patience and long-term thinking needed exactly those qualities to find its audience. The real prison location traumatized the entire cast in ways they never expected. The Ohio State Reformatory wasn't just a filming location, it was a psychological weapon. Forget green screen magic. Darabont chose to film at a real decommissioned prison that had been shut down just 4 years earlier due to inhumane conditions. The cast members have revealed in interviews that walking through those gates each morning fundamentally changed their performances.
The Shawshank Redemption
Well,
quiz?
these
Is this
are
like a BuzzFeed, which prisoner am I from Shawshank Redemption? Because it's in a prison.
sort
right?
of.
Is it in a
Yeah,
prison?
it is in a prison.
Clancy Brown, who played the brutal Captain Hadley, admitted he could literally feel decades of misery embedded in the walls. Tim Robbins would sit alone in the actual 6 by 8 foot cells between takes, absorbing the claustrophobic reality of incarceration. He described experiencing genuine panic when the heavy doors closed, a primal fear that informed every scene. But here's the detail that'll shock you. Many of the background extras were actual former inmates of that very prison. Darabont deliberately hired men who had served time there, and their weathered faces and knowing glances weren't acting. They were reliving their own experiences. The authenticity was so intense, it became almost unbearable. The production team even aged the walls differently for scenes set in different decades, making them progressively cleaner as the timeline moved backward. Morgan Freeman created an entire criminal empire for Red that never made it to screen. Freeman's hidden backstory turned Red into cinema's most complex narrator. While viewers know Red as the wise prison fixer, Morgan Freeman constructed an elaborate criminal history that transformed his entire performance. In Freeman's mind, Red wasn't just a murderer, he was a powerful numbers runner in the black community during the 1930s and 40s. This imagined past explained why Red became Shawshank's ultimate connector, someone who instinctively knew how to navigate power structures and make deals happen. Freeman revealed that this backstory influenced every gesture and line reading throughout the film. When Red first meets Andy, he's not just seeing another prisoner, he's recognizing a fellow man who once held position and lost everything. This invisible foundation gave Freeman's performance layers that audiences feel without consciously understanding why. The narration works because Red isn't just telling Andy's story, he's seeing himself reflected in it. Critics and audiences have praised Freeman's natural performance for decades, never realizing how much deliberate character construction went into creating that effortless wisdom. The depth of Freeman's preparation shows in every quiet moment and knowing glance. The movie posters in Andy's cell tell a secret story of psychological transformation. Those pinup posters weren't just hiding a tunnel, they were mapping Andy's journey to freedom. Everyone knows about the tunnel behind Rita Hayworth's poster, but Tim Robbins revealed the posters themselves contain hidden meaning that completely changes how you understand Andy's character arc. The progression from Rita Hayworth to Marilyn Monroe to Raquel Welch wasn't random. It was deliberately planned to mirror Andy's psychological transformation throughout his imprisonment. Rita Hayworth represents the 1940s innocence and nostalgia of Andy's former life. Marilyn Monroe symbolizes the complexity and sensuality of the changing world outside. But Raquel Welch in 1,000,000 years BC represents something primal and elemental, a return to basic survival instincts. She's literally dressed as a cave woman, which Robbins explained represents Andy stripping away all social conditioning to prepare for his rebirth through the tunnel. Director Frank Darabont confirmed this interpretation, noting how each poster shows progressively less clothing, symbolizing the shedding of civilized constraints. The final shot of Welch's poster, flapping in the wind, isn't just revealing the escape route, it's the last barrier between imprisonment and absolute freedom. Tim Robbins played Andy as two completely different people and nobody noticed. The dual personality performance that fooled audiences for 30 years. Here's a revelation that'll make you want to rewatch immediately. Tim Robbins didn't play Andy Dufresne as one character. He deliberately created two distinct personalities. The public Andy that everyone at Shawshank saw, and the private Andy who was secretly planning his escape for 2 decades. This psychological split influenced every aspect of his performance in ways so subtle that viewers feel the difference without consciously recognizing it. In public scenes, Robbins kept his body language stiff and controlled, his gestures minimal and calculated. But during private moments, like when he plays the opera music or works on his tunnel at night, his entire physicality becomes more fluid and natural. The transformation is so gradual and expertly executed that it registers emotionally rather than intellectually. Robbins spent months perfecting this duality, creating what he called the Andy that Shawshank broke versus the Andy that Shawshank could never touch. This hidden layer of performance explains why Andy feels simultaneously resigned to his fate and mysteriously hopeful throughout the film. The genius lies in how Robbins makes both versions feel completely authentic. The weather patterns throughout the movie are actually a secret code. Every raindrop and ray of sunshine was carefully orchestrated to tell the story. Morgan Freeman dropped this bombshell in interviews. The weather in Shawshank isn't random, it's a carefully constructed emotional roadmap. Pay attention and you'll notice that every traumatic event happens during rainfall. Andy's first assault by the sisters, Tommy's murder, the warden's downfall, all accompanied by rain. It's nature reflecting the darkness of these moments. But Andy's escape happens during the most violent thunderstorm in the film, representing both chaos and cleansing. The rain that washes away his prison identity becomes a baptism of rebirth. Most shocking of all, the final beach scene in Mexico is the only moment in the entire movie with genuinely beautiful, sunny weather. Freeman revealed that every other outdoor scene was deliberately shot with clouds, overcast skies, or gray lighting to maintain the oppressive atmosphere of imprisonment. The sun doesn't truly shine until Andy and Red are finally free. This visual storytelling technique works so subliminally that audiences never consciously notice it, yet it affects the emotional tenor of every single scene. It's weather as character development. The famous ending almost got completely cut by studio executives. The beach reunion that defines the movie was nearly left on the cutting room floor. Prepare to be outraged. The iconic final scene showing Andy and Red reunited on the Mexican beach, consistently ranked as one of cinema's most uplifting conclusions, was almost deleted entirely. Studio executives pushed hard to end the film, with Red simply riding the bus toward the border, arguing that showing the actual reunion was unnecessary and made the movie too long. Frank Darabont fought tooth and nail to keep that scene, explaining that the film wasn't about hope as an idea, but hope fulfilled. Without seeing the friends actually reunited, audiences would be left with the same uncertainty that plagued Red throughout the story. But here's the production detail that'll blow your mind. That beach scene was actually the very first thing they filmed. before Freeman and Robbins had built their on-screen chemistry. Darabont wanted to capture the slightly awkward, tentative quality of old friends reconnecting after years apart. The subtle restraint you see in their reunion feels authentic precisely because the actors hadn't yet developed the deep bond that makes their prison scenes so compelling. Sometimes the best artistic choices come from practical limitations. James Whitmore based Brooks on his own father's depression. The most heartbreaking subplot came from real family tragedy. The Brooks storyline that destroys viewers emotionally wasn't originally planned to be so devastating. James Whitmore, who played the elderly librarian, revealed he based the character on his own father who suffered from severe depression after retirement. The scene where Brooks feeds birds in the park wasn't even in the script. Whitmore suggested it because his father used to perform the same lonely ritual after his mother died. This personal connection transformed what could have been a minor subplot into one of cinema's most powerful explorations of institutionalization. Whitmore's performance carries the weight of real grief and observation, making Brooks's tragic end feel inevitable rather than manipulative. Frank Darabont later revealed that studio executives wanted to cut the entire Brooks sequence, arguing it slowed down the main story. Darabont had to fight to keep it, explaining that without showing what happens to Brooks, Red's final choice to embrace hope becomes meaningless. The contrast between Brooks choosing despair and Red choosing hope is what gives the ending its emotional power. Whitmore's personal investment made the difference between a plot device and a genuinely heartbreaking human story. Thomas Newman's score gets more hopeful note by note, and nobody realizes it. The music literally smuggles hope into the prison one measure at a time. Here's a detail that'll change how you hear the entire movie. Thomas Newman's score undergoes a gradual transformation from mechanical coldness to warm hopefulness that mirrors Andy's journey so subtly, most viewers never consciously notice it. Tim Robbins revealed that early prison scenes feature music with an austere, almost industrial quality that reflects the dehumanizing prison system. But by the final act, the orchestration becomes rich with warmth and even joy. This musical progression happens so gradually that it registers emotionally rather than intellectually. The score does exactly what Andy does throughout the film. It smuggles hope into Shawshank one note at a time. Newman was nominated for an Academy Award but lost to Hans Zimmer's work on The Lion King, which many film scholars consider one of the Oscars' most significant oversights. The music doesn't tell you how to feel. It evolves with the characters, becoming more human as they rediscover their own humanity. It's psychological manipulation at its most sophisticated and effective. The Brooks sequence alone showcases Newman's restraint, using gentle melancholy instead of manipulative swells to capture the old man's confusion and fear. The film's box office failure led to its television immortality, how a $16 million flop became America's most beloved movie. The Shawshank Redemption earned just $16 million during its original theatrical run against a $25 million budget, making it a genuine commercial disaster. Opening against Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump, it was completely overshadowed by flashier competition. But what happened next is one of Hollywood's most remarkable resurrection stories. When Turner Broadcasting acquired Castle Rock Entertainment, they gained the rights to Shawshank and began airing it constantly on TNT. Something magical happened that nobody predicted. People didn't just watch it once, they watched it every single time it appeared on television. Morgan Freeman explained that the film became comfort food for the soul, a movie that viewers couldn't turn off no matter how many times they'd seen it. By the late 1990s, video rental revenue had not only made the film profitable, but established it as one of the most beloved movies of all time. The film's patient journey from failure to phenomenon perfectly mirrors Andy's own story, achieving triumph through persistence rather than flashy spectacle. Sometimes the greatest victories require the longest wait. The maggot-feeding scene required intervention from animal rights activists. Brooks's crow Jake needed protection from Hollywood's brutal efficiency. Here's a detail that sounds made up but absolutely isn't. When filming the scene where Brooks feeds his pet crow Jake, the American Humane Association stepped in to protect the bird from the production crew. The original script called for Brooks to feed Jake live maggots, but animal rights monitors argued this was too harsh and potentially harmful to the crow. The solution was both absurd and touching. The production crew had to find maggots that had died naturally, meeting the AHA's strict specifications for animal welfare. They literally had to source ethically deceased maggots for a movie scene. The attention to detail didn't stop there. Tim Robbins spent considerable time with Jake between takes, learning the bird's behavior patterns so he could time his dialogue around the crow's natural squeaking. Robbins became so attuned to Jake's habits that he could predict when the bird would make noise, allowing him to deliver his lines in the spaces between squawks. The scene where Andy first meets Jake in the library took 9 hours to film because they had to work around the bird's natural behavior. It's a perfect example of how Shawshank's commitment to authenticity extended to every creature on set. Morgan Freeman's shoulder injury came from 9 hours of baseball throwing. The baseball scene nearly destroyed Freeman's throwing arm. In the scene where Red and Andy have their first meaningful conversation, Red is casually tossing a baseball back and forth with another inmate. What looks like simple background action was actually a grueling endurance test that pushed Morgan Freeman to his physical limits. The scene required 9 straight hours of filming, with Freeman continuously throwing the baseball without a single complaint during the entire shoot. The next day, Freeman arrived on set wearing an arm sling, his shoulder completely shot from the repetitive motion. But here's what makes this story incredible. Freeman never once asked for a break or body double during those 9 hours. He understood that the casual nature of the baseball toss was crucial to the scene's authenticity, showing how prison life creates routines that become almost meditative. The physical dedication Freeman showed mirrors the themes of endurance and friendship that run throughout the film. His commitment to that seemingly simple action helped create one of the most natural, unforced conversations in cinema history. Sometimes the most effortless-looking scenes require the most effort to achieve. Freeman's son played young Red in the mugshots and had a secret cameo. Alfonso Freeman pulled double duty in his father's masterpiece. When you see those younger mugshots of Red during his parole hearings, you're not looking at a digitally de-aged Morgan Freeman or some random actor. Those are actual photographs of Morgan's son, Alfonso Freeman, who was 35 at the time of filming. The family resemblance was strong enough that audiences never questioned the authenticity of Red's younger appearance, but Alfonso's contribution to Shawshank goes beyond just posing for photos. He appears in the film as one of the prisoners heckling the new arrivals, including Andy, on their first night in prison. He's the one shouting, "Fresh fish! Fresh fish!" at the terrified newcomers. This means Alfonso's first major film credit involved playing 2 separate roles, a young version of his famous father's character and a rowdy inmate terrorizing the protagonist. It's a unique way to break into the family business, and Alfonso parlayed this experience into more roles in his father's films, including a memorable appearance as a fingerprint technician in Seven the following year. The generational connection adds another layer of authenticity to a film already obsessed with realistic details. The iconic narration was recorded twice due to technical disasters. Freeman's legendary voice work almost got ruined by ancient recording equipment. Morgan Freeman's narration is so integral to Shawshank that it's impossible to imagine the film without his warm, wise delivery. But here's a behind-the-scenes nightmare that almost derailed the entire production. The original narration recordings were completely unusable due to technical problems. Freeman had spent hours in the studio recording all 40 minutes of narration, only to discover that tape hiss and poor audio quality made the recordings worthless. The solution required Freeman to re-record the entire narration in post-production, a process that took 3 weeks to complete properly. But here's where the story gets interesting. Darabont had actually played back Freeman's original narration on set during filming, allowing the actors to react to it in real time. This meant scenes like the rooftop beer sequence were perfectly synchronized with Freeman's voice work, creating seamless integration between narration and action. The technical failure actually led to better results, as the second recording session allowed Freeman to refine his delivery with full knowledge of how the final film looked and felt. Sometimes disasters become blessings in disguise. The Warden was based on a real corrupt prison official from the 1950s. Bob Gunton's villainous performance had terrifying real-world inspiration. Warden Norton wasn't just Frank Darabont's imagination running wild. He was partially based on an actual prison official from the American Midwest, who was eventually convicted of forcing inmates to perform renovation work on his personal home. Bob Gunton revealed that Darabont provided him with newspaper clippings about this real warden, a man who presented himself as a moral, upstanding Christian while simultaneously treating prisoners like personal slaves and embezzling funds. This real-life inspiration informed every aspect of Gunton's performance, from the Bible quotations juxtaposed with casual cruelty to the obsessive concern with appearance versus moral corruption. The historical authenticity makes the warden's eventual downfall even more satisfying because it represents justice for real victims of such institutional abuse. Gunton noted that understanding this background helped him avoid playing the character as an over-the-top villain, instead grounding the performance in the banality of everyday evil. When the warden chooses to end his life rather than face arrest, it's not just fear of prison, it's the destruction of his carefully constructed self-image as a righteous man. The corrupt Bible-quoting warden wasn't Hollywood invention. He was drawn from America's actual penal history. The institutionalization theme hit different cast members in unexpected ways. Several actors experienced their own versions of being institutionalized by the production. The theme of institutionalization, how long-term prisoners become unable to function outside prison walls, affected the cast in ways nobody anticipated. James Whitmore, who played Brooks, revealed that after months of filming in the actual prison, he began to feel genuinely uncomfortable leaving the set each day. The routine of reporting to the same location, following the same schedules, and inhabiting the same character created a psychological dependency that mirrored his character's experience. Tim Robbins experienced something similar but different. He found himself becoming increasingly protective of Andy's cell, feeling a strange sense of ownership over the small space where he spent so much time preparing for scenes. Robbins admitted that on the last day of filming, he felt genuine sadness leaving that cell for the final time, despite it being a cramped, uncomfortable replica of a prison space. Morgan Freeman noted that the cast developed their own prison-like social hierarchy, with established routines and unspoken rules about behavior on set. The authentic prison location didn't just provide atmosphere, it psychologically affected everyone involved in ways that enhanced their performances. Life was imitating art in the most uncomfortable and effective way possible. Andy's library transformation represented Darabont's vision of redemption through education. The library subplot contains Darabont's most personal statement about human dignity. While viewers see Andy's library expansion as a nice subplot, Frank Darabont revealed it represents his core belief about redemption and human potential. The transformation from a few dusty books to the best prison library in New England wasn't just character development. It was Darabont's statement about how education and culture can survive even in the most dehumanizing environments. The library scenes required extensive preparation, with production designers researching actual prison libraries to understand how such spaces evolved over decades. They discovered that real prison libraries often became the most humanizing spaces within otherwise brutal institutions, places where inmates could maintain connections to the outside world and their own intellectual curiosity. Andy's role as librarian allows him to touch nearly every prisoner's life, providing education, entertainment, and hope through the simple act of sharing books. Darabont insisted on showing the gradual improvements, from getting a few new books to eventually helping inmates earn their GEDs. The library becomes a symbol of institutional redemption, proving that even places designed to break the human spirit can be transformed through persistent effort and genuine care for human dignity. The opera scene was Darabont's writer's block breakthrough. Mozart's music became the film's spiritual centerpiece through creative desperation. The famous scene where Andy plays the duet from The Marriage of Figaro over the prison speakers is consistently ranked as one of cinema's most transcendent moments, but it emerged from Frank Darabont's personal struggle with writer's block. While crafting the screenplay, Darabont found himself stuck on how to show Andy's impact on the entire prison population in a single powerful scene. During his writing struggles, Darabont would listen to Mozart to help inspire his creativity, particularly the piece that ends up in the film. The music's beauty and complexity seemed to represent everything Shawshank was trying to destroy: hope, culture, and human connection. Darabont realized that having Andy share this music with the entire prison would create a moment of collective transcendence. showing how beauty can pierce through even the darkest circumstances. The scene works because it's not just rebellion against authority, it's Andy offering his fellow prisoners a glimpse of the world beyond their walls. Tim Robbins added that the moment where Andy turns up the volume wasn't in the original script. It was his spontaneous idea during filming, showing how the actor understood the scene's deeper meaning. The escape tunnel construction became an obsession for the production team. Building Andy's tunnel required actual engineering expertise. The famous tunnel that Andy digs over 19 years presented unique production challenges that pushed the crew to become amateur structural engineers. The tunnel had to be convincing enough to support the film's central plot device, while being safe enough for Tim Robbins to crawl through repeatedly during filming. Production designer Terrence Marsh consulted with actual engineers to ensure the tunnel's dimensions and construction methods would be realistic for the time frame and tools available to Andy. The set construction team built multiple tunnel sections, each designed for different filming needs. Some sections were wider to accommodate camera equipment, while others matched the cramped reality of what Andy would have created with his rock hammer. The most challenging aspect was creating the tunnel's connection to the prison's plumbing system, which required detailed research into 1940s prison construction methods. Robbins spent considerable time crawling through these tunnels during filming, often emerging covered in the chocolate syrup, sawdust, and water mixture that represented the prison's waste. The commitment to practical effects rather than CGI gave the escape sequence a visceral authenticity that audiences can feel. The tunnel became a character in its own right, representing hope literally carved out of stone. The film's tourism impact transformed Mansfield, Ohio, into an unlikely pilgrimage site. Shawshank tourism saved a dying town and created an unexpected cultural phenomenon. The Ohio State Reformatory, once a symbol of institutional failure and human misery, has been completely transformed by the film's cultural impact. What was scheduled for demolition has become one of Ohio's most popular tourist attractions, drawing over 100,000 visitors annually from around the world. The local community in Mansfield, which suffered from industrial decline, embraced the film's legacy as an economic lifeline. The Shawshank Trail now includes over a dozen filming locations throughout the region, creating a tourism economy that generates millions of dollars annually. Visitors can walk through Andy's cell, see the famous oak tree where Andy left Red's message, and even crawl through a replica of the escape tunnel. The prison's gift shop sells Shawshank memorabilia, ranging from redemption red wine to Rita Hayworth posters. Local restaurants offer Shawshank-themed menu items, including Get Busy Living burgers and Zihuatanejo fish tacos. The transformation from a place of punishment to a site of pilgrimage represents yet another layer of redemption, proving that even the darkest places can find new purpose through the power of storytelling. The prison that once broke men's spirits now celebrates the unbreakable nature of the human spirit. Which of these revelations shocked you most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because here's my controversial take. The Shawshank Redemption works so well precisely because it failed initially. Without commercial pressure, Darabont created something authentic instead of profitable. But here's the question that'll keep you up tonight. If studios had interfered more, would we have gotten a better movie or lost a masterpiece entirely?